Hello and welcome everyone to this month's TOC webinar, Hack Your Box for 2021 and Beyond. My name is Chris King and I am the Chief Technologist for the Training Officers Consortium. I'd like to welcome everyone here today. Today we have Cindy Neves as our speaker. She is a trainer and a facilitator for over 20 years and has worked in both federal service and private sector, including two organizations renowned for top-notch customer service, Southwest Airlines and Chick-fil-A. She is currently the training program coordinator for BEA, where she heads up the Mentoring and Aspiring Leader program. Cindy is also a certified DISC facilitator. Her latest focus is being certified as an in and out of the box trainer and is excited to facilitate and share the box with others. Cindy's passion is facilitating aha moments that serve to cement learning into daily use. It's one thing to drink the Kool-Aid in a training session, yet post-learning application is sometimes difficult. Kool-Aid is sweet, but long-term application is priceless. So Cindy, why don't you come up off mute and we'll go ahead and get started.
All right. Thank you. Thanks so much, Chris. Yep, I have drank a lot of Kool-Aid over the years, and I know how that goes to get real excited about something and then not put it into application. So that is my goal today. And just welcome everybody. Thank you for spending some time with us. Good morning or good afternoon, depending where you're calling in from. Some of you I recognize were at the annual Institute session that I did on future proofing your thinking. And if you were there, first of all, thank you very much for joining me in that. I hope that was beneficial. But I wanted to just say that today's session will kind of continue where we left off in that session, but it also stands alone. You did not have to be in that session to hopefully benefit from this session. So today we're going to explore how to let go of some of our thinking, maybe think more of some different kind of thinking, which is where we left off in that previous session. If we were to do a 2-hour session, you would get both halves, both sessions together. So let's start with a poll. And this is the question for you. It's what comes to mind when you hear the phrase, think outside the box, okay? What comes to mind when you hear the phrase, think outside the box? And just go ahead and check as many as apply. So you can choose think creatively, you don't repeat past errors, maybe it's way overused, 9-dot puzzle, or never heard that phrase. And then as you're typing in your responses, if any of you have additional responses, feel free to type in the chat. All right. And I can see already that think creatively, responses are still coming in and continue to vote, but think creatively tends to be the #1 thing that a lot of folks think of. And it's interesting that nobody said they'd never heard the phrase. So we've all heard the phrase, think outside the box. So thank you. I appreciate you participating. And we'll just go ahead and close that poll. Today I have some invitations that I'm going to invite you to do. We're going to also explore kind of what is the box, then what is hacking the box, how do we hack the box, and moving on from there. So the 3 invitations that I would like to invite you today are, first of all, to gift yourself this time and just kind of treat it like a spa treatment for your mind. I don't know if you're like me, but since we've been teleworking, I find myself multitasking for almost everything. So it's very rare to like focus on something 100% and not try to be doing 2 or 3 things at the same time. So take a break from your thinking. And then the second invitation is that I invite you to enter a no judgment zone for yourself or for others. Especially, I find that sometimes I am more cognizant of not judging others, and I find that I'm harder on myself. So today I invite you to show no judgment and patience for yourself and for others. And then openly share the best of yourself in the chat pod. So what we're going to do today, we have a whole lot of material to cover. So I'm going to encourage you to type your questions in the chat, and Mel will be collecting them if it's something that you're confused on or I need to clarify, we can do that right away. But some of the questions we're going to collect, and then we will respond at the end, or maybe respond to those by sending out some information afterward. I also would like to say that please communicate with each other in the chat pod. So even if I don't stop and read or comment on what you wrote, I love it when participants talk to one another and encourage one another and have ongoing conversations. So please, please do that today. So we're going to begin with a brainstorm. And when people say think outside the box or think out of the box, what is that box you're supposed to think out of? And this is going to be the first opportunity where I'm going to ask you to go ahead and share your thoughts in the chat pod. I'll give you a hint. There are no wrong answers to this question. So what is that box? What is the box? What comprises the box? And while you're typing, I just want to share that somewhere along the way, I heard that using the word brainstorming is like out of fashion. I'm supposed to say, let's have a session where we do thought showers. Okay, so let's do thought showers. I think I'm going to stick with just brainstorm, though it's more my speed. But anyway, let's see what you guys have coming in. We have the way we always done things. Yeah, it's kind of the way we've done things, the historical way of thinking, business as usual, status quo, and being inflexible. So yeah, those are great answers. And we're going to show you a short video clip based on some answers that have come in based on thousands of participants in and out of the box sessions just around the world, because they're box facilitators around the world, and we've kind of collected all this information, what participants have said, and I put together a video for you. And I think you guys have covered most of what is in the video, but let's take a look. And I will give you a clue that you might want to turn this down a little. In the bottom right corner of your video, there's a video bar. You can turn down the volume if it's too loud. All right. Okay, let's see here. Okay. And as you could see, you guys came over with a lot of the same answers that were in the video. And I can make the slides available, Chris. The question was asked if the slides would be available, and yes, I can make them available. So thank you for participating in that. The box represents the boundaries of our thinking, especially when we're under pressure. But one of the things that is important to understand
Hey, Cindy,
is
stand by
that
one
thinking
second.
in the box. Yeah. Okay.
If you are dialed in by phone, if you could please mute your phone lines. We can't put this into lecture mode or then you won't be able to hear. So if you dialed in by phone, please mute your phone line. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Are we good? Okay. All right. So one of the things that's important to understand is that thinking in the box isn't inherently bad or wrong or undesirable or any of that, because it's fine for many situations for us to think inside the box. For example, safety and survival. Like if we didn't know what was dangerous and what wasn't, we wouldn't last long in this world, right? So when I'm on my morning walk and I see that mushroom or those pretty berries, I don't even have to think outside the box to know it's probably not a good idea to pick those and eat those because that may end very badly. Also, when it comes to making sense of the world around us, sometimes thinking in the box is just fine. Um, when I see a furry animal and it goes meow, or maybe it goes bow wow wow, like I don't have to do any special thinking to know cat from dog. Okay, so sometimes thinking in the box is just fine. Most of the times, it's just fine. But sometimes those thinking limits create problems. So when is it? And if you would type in the chat, when is it then that you do want to think out of the box? And while you're typing that, I'll just share that you know, if Lanira and I are sitting on the beach and we're drinking pina coladas, one day, Lanira, by the way, it's going to happen. But if we're sitting on the beach and we're drinking pina coladas, she's not telling me to think outside the box. No, it's when, yes, I see one day, right? I see you guys typing. It's when you want to do something new. It's when something needs to be solved. It's when the old ways of thinking aren't giving you expected or desired results. Exactly. So sometimes we know it might be beneficial to think out of the box, but then we start to think more clearly about new ideas and solutions, and we convince ourselves they won't work, right? We seek psychological safety in our box because if we stray too far, we remember that a new approach was suggested or even maybe implemented, and then we found out, oh, it didn't work. There's no budget for that, took too much time, it's too risky. So there are often a lot of reasons why we convince ourselves to stick with the tried and true and to stay in our comfort zone.
You have been muted.
All right. Is it time for out of the box thinking? So I put together a little flowchart just to kind of help us evaluate when it is time to consider thinking out of the box. Because if it were really super easy, barely an inconvenience, we would all do it. We would all know when it's time. But we have to think about it sometime. Because let's start with this. Let's say you have a goal and you ask yourself, is it achievable with my current thinking, right? I have this goal, is it achievable? Well, if the answer is yes, you're done. Good to go. But if the answer is no, you might ask yourself, well, am I willing to explore some different thinking? And if the answer to that is no, well, forget about it. And that's okay because we agreed it's a no judgment zone. So we're not going to judge one another or ourselves if we're just not willing to explore different thinking right now. But if we are, all right, let's hack our box. And that's why we're here. So what do we mean by hack your box, or what is a hack? So thoughts in the chat on the word hack. And as you're typing, I will share that there are more definitions to the word hack than I ever dreamed were imaginable. It was a word that I just did not have an understanding. It had so many meanings. Yes. So it can be like a cut, like you're going to hack off your branches, or maybe it's a computer hack. Or I've even heard it used as a slang word for a cab driver, right? But for today's purposes, we're referring to a hack as a clever tip or technique for doing or improving something. Yeah. We call the process hack your box because we're making quick adjustments, course corrections, reshaping unconscious thinking. So as we explore this thinking differently, it's helpful to have a point of reference in mind. So you want to have something that's like your North Star here. So think of something unresolved that you want to resolve. And we're going to call this a success image. Okay? So let's think about the success image. And what we're asking for is, what is that better than today outcome that you're looking for? So your success image is what you're being drawn towards. And in the success image, the heart is the motivation and emotional connection you have with the target, because you have to have some kind of connection with your goal or you wouldn't have it as a goal. The target itself represents the goal, and the puzzle pieces represent the complexity and the level of challenge needed to reach the goal. So if you could think of at least one success image to kind of keep in your mind today, because if you have it in your forefront of your mind, then it helps to know that when you're trying to solve that as we're exploring these hacks, you have something in mind. So this is what it would look like when you put all those pieces together. You have your current reality and there's some pieces missing, and you have the success image. And right now there's some kind of gap between what we want and what our current reality is. So I will ask if anyone's feeling super bold and you want to share in the chat what your success image is, kind of what you're thinking about. It could be something that maybe you want to open your own business and be successful, or maybe you want to run a marathon, or maybe you want to go on a cruise around the world, or maybe you want to you want to go back to college and get a college degree. Whatever your success image is, please share it if you feel like it. I see someone wants to write a book. Oh, we have people that want to retire. Oh, 57. Ah, that would be nice. Yes, feel free to share with one another as I move on. So we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. I love this quote. And if this resonates with you, let's go and use that green check mark that Chris was showing us at the beginning how to use. That the little person with their hand in the air and there's a drop down arrow next to it. Click on that drop down arrow and click on the green check if this resonates with you. Good, I see a lot of green checks coming in. Again, it's the icon at the top with the little person with their hand in the air. There's a drop down, and if you click on that drop down, you'll see the green check mark. Lovely. And occasionally people raise their hands. That's okay. I know you were going for the green check mark, no worries. So we're going to explore thinking differently through 3 different hacks, and beginning with opening up your filters. So filters are an integral part of your box. And I think of it like this, like, okay, you've heard the expression, every square is a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square. So I think about it like every box has filters, and it's not always necessary to think outside the box, but it's always necessary to open up and challenge your filters. And I think that's too much geometry for one day. Hopefully this will make more sense, and a lot of sense as we move along. So filters impact how we see the world around us. We've all probably been to the eye doctor and they say, look at this chart. Is this better or is this better? And they click and it was 1 or 2, 2 or 1. So the same is true with our thinking filters. It's instead of looking for like clear vision, we're looking for like thinking clarity and understanding. So it's like, does this make more sense or does this make more sense? Is this important or is this important? Another example is a color filter. So when white light reaches the red filter, only the red light goes through and other colors are filtered out. So by a green check mark, have you ever tried this? Have you ever tried just being very still and quiet and listening to all the things that are going on around you, the noises, and discovered that there's a lot of noises that you didn't hear before because you were filtering them out because they weren't important? So green check mark if you've ever done that. I went outside yesterday and I started listening, and I heard cars and trucks and the breeze, the leaves in the breeze, and I heard birds and like all these things, and I kind of had tuned them out. And I realized because at that moment I had decided they weren't important, so my filters had filtered them out. Thank you. So filters don't operate alone. It's like a water filter. There's combinations of many different parts of us, many different things. And so we're going to pull up another poll and ask, which of these have had the greatest influence, do you think, on your filters? And I'm asking for you to select all that apply, and also just type some additional thoughts in the chat should you have any. So how many of these, and it could be all of them, it could be 1 or 2. Which of these have had the greatest influence on your filters? Feel free to type in the chat. Okay, a lot of good answers coming in. You can continue voting. When I see the word age, I think that's one of my biggest filters. Also, birth order. I find being the oldest, I think that's a different experience completely than someone who's a middle or a youngest child. But all of these have some influence on me, and it looks like on a lot of you guys as well. So thank you for participating. Yeah. So the thing about filters, though, they help us make sense of what we see around us, but they can be fooled. So the question is, can you teach an can you teach an old dog new tricks? We're going to take a quick look at a video. In this video, the door used to
Give me the
have
phone.
glass pane, but now it's gone.
Give me the phone.
Oh, somebody, please mute. Oh, we've got somebody speaking. Um, yeah, so we're gonna see like a short video clip. There used to be a glass pane in the door, and now the glass pane is gone. But no matter how the owner encourages the dog, well, you'll see what happens.
Hey, let's go. Come on. Yes, you can come.
Release!
Release.
Come on, JJ!
Come on.
JJ, come!
Come on.
No.
There's no door there.
Do it one more time.
Okay, one more time. You're shaking. You're shaking. Ready? Come on, JJ. Come on.
Okay, open the door now.
Ready? Okay. Release.
Oh!
Oh, that one always cracks me up. Yeah, this is oftentimes what we do as well. Sometimes we see danger where there is none, or we're overly cautious where we don't need to be. And so part of creativity is questioning our filters and looking for more or different information to expand and open them. A poor dog. Maybe some bacon would have helped. All right, so we open, one of the ways we can open our filters is by being curious. And I think this is one of those that gets underrated. It's one of these qualities that gets underrated a lot. But the more information you have, the better you are to make, able to make decisions and think in new ways and make different decisions. And so, you know, when we've been home and we've heard about, you know, 100 ways to pivot your business to online and all this. But curiosity is, I haven't read about it as being one of the top skills or top uh, characteristics that's important in these challenging times. And it's really important because it takes the mind to new places and unexplored territories. It opens the door for us to think of novel ideas and novel possibilities. So another way to open our filters is self-awareness. And, you know, awareness is knowing what's happening around you, while self-awareness is knowing what you're experiencing, but also why you're doing it and why you're making the decisions you're making. So I know most of us are probably, well, I won't say most of us. Some people might be rolling their eyes like, self-awareness, come on. Of course I know myself, you know, I know who I am. But do you really know what drives your decisions and why you behave the way you do? And the reason I find this so fascinating is because we wouldn't have rampant unconscious bias if we were actually as self-aware as we believe we are. So I'm going to do a quick poll here. And if I told you 1,000 people were polled and asked the question, are you more or less biased than the average person? What do you think they would say? All right, so here's our poll. You can choose 300. Yeah, see how 300 say they're less biased than the average person, I should have said. So how many said they're less biased than the average person? 300, 500, or 850? So how many said, oh yeah, I'm not as biased as the average person? Yeah. So when we ask people, are you less biased than the average person? almost everybody says they are. So it's like between 8 and 900 of the 1,000 said, I'm less biased than the average person. I've got some people in the chat saying, I'm super biased and I know I'm biased. So there's some self awareness right there. That's fun. All right. Thank you for that poll. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of bias blind spot going on generally in the world. But of course not me because I'm less biased than the average person, right? I'm just all right. So when we consider self-awareness, let's think of knowledge and information as being distributed in 3 buckets. And this is one of my favorite visuals. I love this because we have information. We have what I know, and we have what I know I don't know. So I don't know how to knit, I don't know how to surf, and I don't know most things about math and et cetera, et cetera. But I know they're out there. I just know I don't know them. But then there's this bucket of what I don't know. And for me, I think that bucket's probably the biggest for me. What I don't know. So by show of green check mark, if what I don't know is your biggest bucket, could I have a green check mark and a red X if it's not? So what I don't know. If that is your biggest bucket, could we have a green check mark? I know for sure it's mine because there's so much that I don't have any idea that I don't know. So I see some green check marks coming in. All right. Thank you. Yeah. There's an infinity of things that I don't know. And when I see these information buckets, it always reminds me of this. Many of you will recognize this. The Johari window, the 2 psychologists, Joe and Harry, and they came up with this model. And the model is fairly simple. It's got 4 different quadrants there with the arena. That's what the part of us that's known to ourselves as well as known to others. Then we have our blind spots, which are things that are known to others about us, but we don't see them ourselves. And then we have which is, all right, can you hear me now? My slides went a little wonky. Am I back? Mel or Chris, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you can hear me, Chris? All right.
Yep.
Sorry, that was an adventure in technology there. Okay, so the mask was what the part of me that's not known to others, but is known to myself. That's that piece of me where I'm being maybe a little fake or inauthentic because I'm afraid I don't want you to know some things about me. You might not like me. And then there's that unknown, which is that piece where I don't know that about me and you don't know it about me. And so when it comes to increasing self-awareness, I love this model because it's just really simple. You can open up your arena and reduce the mask. And to do that, you just be more authentic and take a chance, by being more open and to reduce blind spots and tap into the unknown. You might want to ask for more feedback from others. Like we were talking about being curious. So how do you find out what you don't know? Ask for a lot of feedback. But we could do an entire session on Johari window and communication and feedback, but I just like to mention that it's a great model for increasing self-awareness. So the last thought on filters, we all have our own, and therefore, we see the exact identical events in different ways, which is so fascinating to me. So in this picture, there's some event happening in the center. Maybe it's some fireworks going off. And the person on the left sees like the sparkly and the fireworks, and the person on the right sees like the smoke and hears the explosion. And of course, that's my interpretation through my filters, because you may have seen it completely. You may have interpreted this picture completely differently. But the point being that we may be sharing the same moment with others, but our filters mean that we have different perceptions of the same event. So that brings us to our second hack, which is separating facts from stories. And I love this because the practice of opening my filters and like becoming more curious and self-aware. Okay, yes, I can hack that and I can do some immediate results, but for really that's a lifelong journey, opening filters and doing. So that's a really long. It can be a really long journey, lifelong. But this whole thought process of separating out facts from stories has been immediately life-changing for me. Like it was a relationship game changer for me. And I think it's really cool. So facts are what a video camera would be able to record, and stories come from our opinions and our perceptions and our interpretations. So I always think, the danger, 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 like emerges when we treat our stories and our opinions as if they were facts. So I have two of my favorite people in the world, Jim and Diana from the Conscious Leadership Group. They wrote a fantastic book called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And I'm going to show a short clip from one of their videos here on how to distinguish facts from story.
So one of the things that really slows down work productivity and kills powerful conversations is when individuals and teams don't make a distinction between facts and stories.
Yeah.
Facts are what a video camera would record. It's unarguable. A story is what you literally make up in your mind. It's an opinion, a judgment, a belief, what you imagine. So we want to play a little game here and show you how it works. Diana and I are going to go back and forth, and we're going to say, I notice, and that'll be a fact. And then we're going to say, and I imagine, and that'll be a story. And we'll just go back and forth so you can hear the distinction between the two. You want to start?
Sure. I notice you putting your lips together, and I imagine that you're withholding yourself to let me talk.
I notice your eyebrow went up when you said withholding yourself to let me talk, and I imagine you were excited about saying that.
I notice the gray in your hair, and I imagine that sometimes that's been hard for you to allow your aging to show up here.
I notice you asked Carson to go get us sandwiches and bring them back. I imagine you're actually a fantastic hostess.
I noticed that I didn't show up for our group call the other night, and I imagine that you were sad about that or angry.
There you go. Fact, story. I notice only what a video camera would record. Imagine, here's what I make up. Great teams distinguish those two. They articulate the facts and they hold their stories lightly. Give it a try.
Okay, so I see in the chat that there may have been some issues with the video, with the audio. I'm sorry, audio with the video. Yeah, and if you were having some difficulties hearing it, don't worry. We're going to cover what they talked about here over the next few slides. That was just an example, but I wanted to ask. So they're asking back and forth. I notice and imagine, or they're commenting back and forth. But did you notice anything that they did not do? Did you notice anything stood out to you that they did not do as they were doing this back and forth? I notice, I imagine, I notice, I imagine. While you're typing, I'll just say it's there are probably a lot of valid answers here, but the thing that stands out to me is that neither participant confirmed or denied. Exactly. There was not, exactly. I see this in the chat. They didn't respond. There was no asking why. There was no confirmation. Is that correct? There was no follow-up with additional comments. Right. And that is, to me, one of the key aspects of this, because what they did mirrors what we do hundreds of times a day. We see things, we see facts, we form opinions about them, and we don't get feedback or ask for verification for most of the stories that our mind creates. So we're going to do an exercise based on what Jim and Diana just did. And I'm going to kick off with the first one as an example, and you guys can jump in the chat wherever you want. The key is that what you notice, which are the facts, they're always constrained by what you can see with your eyes, right here, right now. The things that you imagine, which are your opinions, are not constrained in this way. So they can be anything you think of. So for example, I see this photo and I say, you know, I notice I notice the color of her hair, and I imagine that she is super creative. So what do you notice or imagine when you see this photo? And you can just type right on in the chat. And as I go on to the next one, if you want, you can put a number, like number 1. Yeah, you notice she loves color. You imagine she's rebellious. I love that. I love that. Yeah, she's a vibrant person. You see, and we form these opinions just based on what we see, right? Fun. Yeah. All right. Now let's take a look at this next one. So I might say, I notice his tattoos, and I imagine that he's fun to hang out with. You know, what do you think? What do you see? We see things, we see the facts, and we immediately form opinions. So we have someone thinking that he might be a scientist. Yeah. Super genius. Yeah. His closed hands and wants to be left alone. Oh, yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, because you can notice any number of things about him. And let's take this last one. Lanier noticed his glasses. That's funny because when I see this last picture, the first thing I notice is her glasses, and I think, gosh, she's got some fashion style. Like, she's fashion savvy. I love the way those look. So I notice her glasses, and I think she's fashion savvy. What do you think? Fashionista. I love that. Yeah. Yeah, short natural hair, culturally aware. So yeah, I mean, we don't know if that's right or wrong, but we form these opinions. And so let me ask you guys, is it easier, do you think, to notice or imagine? Is it easier to notice the facts or come up with the opinions and imagine stuff surrounding the facts? So we have, yeah, I mean, it may be just depending on you. It may be the facts or it may be the opinions. So it really just depends. But what's interesting is before we were virtual, we would do this exercise, like we would send people off in pairs and let them kind of do a notice imagine with each other. And it's interesting because after the first couple of rounds, like if I ask you to do this for 2 minutes with the same picture, would that get easier or harder? Like if I ask you to keep going, I notice your black shirt and I imagine you don't like color. Yeah, it would. Some people say easier, some people say harder. The thing is those initial noticings tend to be things that are just, obvious that we don't mind sharing. But like if you were doing a notice imagine with me after you got through the obvious initial things, and then you'd start noticing the crow's feet around my eyes and my wrinkles, you're not going to say those things. So there's a certain like awareness piece that we notice, but yet we're hesitant to say certain things, and probably rightfully so. You become more creative without fear. That's a good comment. That's a good comment. So it's, to me, it gets harder as you go on with this exercise. It gets a lot more difficult. And so I want to share that once I started doing this, I see this in every turn. I see notice imagine now. And I'd like to encourage you guys to keep like a journal or a daily list for just a few days of all the things that you decide. When someone cuts you off in traffic and you decide they're an idiot, or you're in the grocery store and somebody has 14 items and the six item or less checkout, and you just decide that they are insensitive, or whatever the story is you put in your head, I encourage you to keep a journal and just kind of follow up and sort those out in your head. And this is something that actually happened just the other day. I just want to share for fun. I had a meeting with a colleague and I sent her a message, Teams chat. Hi, I'll be about 5 minutes late for a meeting. She says, hey, no problem. Just let me know whenever you're ready. So I go to tell her I'm ready, but as I start typing, hey, I'm calling in now, I noticed that my caps lock was on. And so I noticed the caps lock, but I didn't undo the first word, which was calling. I did it in caps and I went, oh, that's okay. Undid the caps lock and said, calling in now, but calling is all in caps. What do you think she noticed the all caps. What do you think she imagined? Can you think of anything? Now she did put a little, ha face. Yeah, that I was upset, that I was angry, yelling. It's so interesting to me because she could have interpreted any number of these things. And what she actually interpreted was, we're not going to do video today. We're only calling. She interpreted that to mean Cindy doesn't want to be on video, so we're only calling in today. I thought that was really cute. Yeah, it was. But we talked about it and we worked through it. But how many times a day do you notice something, form an opinion, and never check in with that person? So anyway, I just want to share a final few thoughts on this. Stories are made up and they're not true. And a lot of times, I'm sure we've all been in a situation where you've heard someone say, the fact is they messed it up, or the fact is their team dropped the ball. Fact is this idea will never work. The fact is fill in the blank, whatever. So one of the key takeaways that I would love for you guys to have is that aha moment and realizing how many of the things that we consider facts and truths about others and about circumstances are in reality actually just opinions and stories. All right, you put the thoughts, feelings, and interpretations into that. So it's key to take ownership of your imagination. And let's just do a pop quiz. And so I'm going to ask for see what we've learned. Green check mark for fact and red X for story. And we'll go through this real quick. If I say I notice you have short hair, can I have a green check mark if you think that is a fact, or a red X if you think it's a story or an opinion? All right, so green check mark, I've got a lot of green check marks. Does anybody think that's an opinion? I see one opinion coming up, couple. All right, well, here is thank you for playing along. It actually is a story, because you know what? I used to live in this place where everybody had hair down past their bottom. And, now I moved and you have hair down to your shoulders. And I'm like, oh my gosh, your hair's so short, right? So that's totally opinion. Short relative to what is exactly right. And I'll say that almost all adjectives can fall into the opinion category, because you walk into Home Depot and you say, I want red paint. Yeah, there's probably 300 choices, right? So I notice your cowboy boots. Let's see. Let's do a green check if you think that's a fact, and a red X if you think that's a story or an opinion. It's an opinion with a red X. So I see some green checks and I see some red X's. Okay. Well, believe it or not, that's also an opinion, a story, because, if I'm in Australia or Mexico or Texas or the UK, we may all have different opinions on what constitutes cowboy boots. Okay. So let's go to the next one. So I notice your nose. What do you think? Green check for fact. Yep. This one's pretty straightforward. It's pretty straightforward. A video camera would record that you have a nose, and there it is. All right. And then last but not least, I noticed that you are nervous. All right, I see a lot of red X's coming in. Yeah, because you can't judge someone's inside by what you see on the outside, and maybe I just had too much coffee this morning. You never know why someone might be showing what they show on the outside, but we can't interpret their inside. So yes, that's a story. And as we move to our last hack, I just want to say that this actually has happened. We did a scenario with some of our leaders where there was a new boss, and the new boss looked at their watch repeatedly while they were meeting one of their new employees. And the new employee immediately walked out and went to one of their colleagues and said, the boss thinks I'm boring. And then built a whole story around that. And then next thing you know, the employee's like, well, I'll answer the boss's questions, but I'm not going to volunteer information because they think I'm boring. And so all of a sudden there's this communication barrier that comes up. And You see what I mean? And do you think this can happen? Does this ever happen in real life where we form these stories and then we behave as if they're facts and we go down this rabbit hole and it can be really negative. So yeah. And yes, I actually, Gary, totally agree that gray hair. Absolutely, I agree with you. That could be a story for sure because maybe I think it's gray, maybe you think it's white, or maybe somebody else thinks it's a different color. So thank you for pointing that out. And our last hack of the day, and we're going to talk about, is listening to the wisdom of your future self. So by a green check mark, are there any Outlander fans in the group? Outlander, Diana Gabaldon. Or, yeah, we got a couple. Yay! I love Outlander. Or what about Back to the Future? Any aficionados of Back to the Future? So we've seen the time travel in some of our favorite books and movies. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that 30,000 foot view. Like, if you could flash forward and time travel to your future self, or wisdom, because we're often so close to a situation at any given moment, like we can't see it accurately. So if we could go to the future and meet with ourselves at any given age or stage, and you can pick for a mental reference. I'm going to pick age 75. This is my 75-year-old version of myself. So I've time traveled. Here I am with my future self, and we're sitting down for coffee or a glass of wine. And hey, nice to meet you, 75-year-old Cindy. So then I'm going to tell her about my success image. That's that image that we thought of earlier. And that's going to be some unresolved issue or some unreached goal. And I'm going to listen now to what I need to hear to help make better decisions. And I'm going to listen carefully and pay attention. But here's the key. Listening to the wisdom of your future self requires some radical honesty and self-awareness and stillness, because it requires you to quiet your mind and open it up and listen to what might be uncomfortable to hear. My future self hit me upside the head with this message, and I think of it as the ballad of the little engine that could. Because instead of I think I can, I sometimes I think I can't, I think I can't. And have you ever felt guilty for like being super successful or smart or athletic, and maybe you've had the best time of your life and you ruin it later with negative thinking, or maybe I think we've all been guilty of this. Maybe you've deflected a compliment by either oh no, so and so, it was a team effort, it wasn't me, whatever. Um, if so, you may be upper limiting yourself. And my future self's wisdom called me to the carpet on this. So the upper limits problem is from a book called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, which is such a fabulous book. I recommend it to everyone. But basically, what he talks about is he says, we want to be healthy, positive, healthy, wealthy, and wise, but we do things that hold us back from achieving those goals because we don't think it's possible. So if you were to imagine two parallel lines, what's between those lines? It's our life, inside, but that's our life. We have friends, family, jobs, habits, patterns, whatever. And we go through our lives between those lines. But the moment we hit one of those lines or go outside the lines, we get kind of freaked out because it's out of the norm. So, in business, you might be doing all the right things, but you're not making money, or you might be very successful, but your relationship isn't working. You won an award, but you find yourself getting depressed. I mean, most of us can relate. We keep ourselves between those two lines. It's basically like our internal thermostat that determines how much stuff we're going to allow ourselves, how much love, how much success, how much wealth, health, whatever we're going to allow ourselves. The problem is that this was usually programmed for most of us when we were very young by our parents and friends and the people around us. So if we don't acknowledge and understand this and have the self-awareness to address it, there's a high possibility that we're going to get stuck between those parallel lines and think that we don't deserve the best. So keeping in mind that success image you chose earlier, you see that it's kind of pulling us forward, but the box is holding us back. So the chair here is representing our comfort zone, our current strategies, our past experiences, and our upper limits comprise the limiting beliefs of the box. So when we buy into that limiting beliefs of our box, we upper limit ourselves. So my message, I don't want to upper limit myself any more than I already do. So my message, my future self said, believe you can, and you are enough. And these are just simple but very profound messages. And in my, in stillness and listening, my future self was able to kind of give me these messages. And so no more of, if I only had XYZ, I'd be happy, or if only so and so treated me happy, I'd be, such a way, I'd be fulfilled. I'm going to believe I can and believe I'm enough. And so right now, as we're getting ready to wrap up in our last few minutes, I would love to hear if you're willing to share a message from your future self. You certainly don't have to, but if you can think of something that your future self might say to you, some encouragement or a message that they would give you to achieve your success image, what would they say? And please continue typing, because I'm going to share, while you're typing, one other message that 75-year-old Cindy said. She said, it's so easy to get wrapped around the crisis du jour, whatever the current fire is. But then as soon as you're done with that one, there's another one, and then another one. And then you know what? Time has gone by, and I find that I wasn't present. I was so concerned about the future or the past. So my message, she said, make these days the good old days. In other words, stop making mountains out of molehills and be happy now. I love the messages you guys are typing in the chat. There's some very, very powerful messages. Thank you for sharing. So imagine how your life would be different if you don't forget the wisdom. I highly encourage keeping some kind of written journal, or, you can put sticky notes all around you, a string on your finger, make a baby box like we did in the last session, to remind you, but keep it visual so you don't forget. And so we've talked about an awful lot today, and none of it's easy, because, like I said, if it's easy, we'd all be doing it. So I fall back on Nike's message. Nike, the shoe company, not the winged goddess of victory, but I guess they're related. So, which is just do it. So this is how it might look once your hacks are implemented. You're going to face forward, expanded thinking, feeling your way forward, and marching straight for that success image. And you're going to do that. And as you do that, you're going to think differently, and you immediately change your emotional and cognitive responses to events and perceptions of things going on around you. And the new response kind of changes how you behave and react towards, you create a positive impact on others around you. So that's one of the reasons we say change your box, change your world. And with that, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope this was beneficial. Yes, we can share the slides. And Mel, we don't really have time for questions, do we? I need to turn this over to you.
You're correct. We are almost out of time. I would just say that if anybody has any questions, please type it in the chat now, and we will keep things rolling here. So as I look at our outro here, just a reminder. TOC registration is open now. We still have some program left in our program year. We have a roundtable coming up in June, dialogues about diversity. So you can go to TOC registration if you're interested in attending that session, and then keeping track of what's coming for the program year that will start later in the summer. So thank you, Cindy, for this great session here. I've got the slide up now for the survey link. And if you will click on that, that is a live link there. Down in the lower left-hand corner also, there's all of our links are going to appear in a web links pod that's there for you. So everybody take a look at it. Please give us your feedback on this session. As you know, in the training industry, it's important for us to be able to adjust our delivery on these things. So please take a minute to give us your feedback in that survey. As I mentioned, June's roundtable is called Dialogues About Diversity. It starts on June 8th. Our roundtable is a special program that TOC is piloting this year. It is a 4-week deep dive into a topic area. It starts with a live webinar on the first week. In the second week, it gives you some practical usage tips about that topic. On the third week, it features a live panel Q&A about the topic, and then on the fourth week, it'll include some bonus materials for you to continue your learning beyond that. So if you're interested in diving deep into dialogues about diversity, you can go ahead and click on the link to the monthly program there on this slide, support. Check us out at trainingofficers.org. So our upcoming professional development program, as I mentioned, June is our roundtable, and then we'll have a webinar in July as well. This one's called Writing Documents Under Pressure, Making It Easy. That will be a free webinar in July to take us out of our program year. I will mention that we are, speaking of thinking outside of the box, we are in the middle of a survey about ideas for themes to use in our 2021-2022 program year. And so in the chat now, I'm going to put in a link to a survey that would let you submit an idea to use as a theme for the TOC 21-22 program year. So if you will, please give us your ideas on that. Think outside of the box. That survey will be open until June 4th. So again, thank you everybody for tuning in today. Cindy, thank you. That was a very, very great presentation. Really enjoyed listening to it and thinking outside of the box. And thanks for sharing with us. If there are any other questions or comments, we'll hang out here for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and stop